I have the great pleasure of introducing our next speaker. Eddie On has been engaged in policy and legal advocacy since 2009. He is also the writer and artist of Advocate, a graphic memoir to be published by Penguin Random House on April 16, 2024. In addition to his work for Brightline, he serves on 3 commissions for local and state government agencies related to environmental policymaking. Then in 2022, he was elected by his peers to serve as president of the San Francisco Commission on the Environment. Prior to being a nonprofit attorney, he was an AmeriCorps member, teaching public speaking and arts workshops in Oakland's Chinatown. While working toward his law degree, he continued to teach art and public speaking workshops for youth and worked for the Assembly Judiciary Committee in Sacramento. His workforce development expertise and analysis of federal constitutional law has also assisted multiple municipalities in Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, and New York. He is an inductee of the state of California's Clean Energy Hall of Fame for his work in equity and clean energy. Please join me in welcoming Eddie to the stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. Eddie On, again, Executive Director of Brightline Defense. And today you've already heard from government agencies, leaseholders, elected officials about offshore wind. And what I have for you is essentially a story told in 5 slides. And so hopefully it's very amusing, entertaining unto itself. I know we're essentially digesting our lunch still and hoping we can get at it. So with the first slide, I first of all wanted to describe where we came from and the nonprofit I'm speaking to you on behalf of. Eventually, we'll see that. Whoops. There we go. And part of what Brightline does as a nonprofit, maybe to even understand, is that we think a lot about community first and foremost. Even working through these pictures one by one, you can see in the first picture is me in a hoodie, literally sweating it out. I love this picture because it's up in Eureka. It was with a particular community coalition, Core Hub, trying to do a barbecue for it. And for me, it indicates some of the best of our work, the ability to connect directly with communities, and then continue to explore different relationships, even outside of community. For instance, the nexus between community and labor that you even see in that second picture, where the Brightline team recently went up to Eureka for the operating engineers local 3 crab feed. And being able to experience that, you'll see Paige Hopkins there on the furthest left, I believe, is really a good experience. It's being able to, again, understand that nexus between good paying jobs and a clean energy economy, and then pushing forward concepts like local hiring to make sure that local impacted communities ultimately get benefits associated with these projects. And then on the left-hand side, of course, you'll see other photos that relate to Morro Bay, the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary, understanding, of course, there's a broader ecosystem in which our work operates. And part of that is understanding that there's a ton of travel involved up and down the state. I'm sure many of you in the room have engaged in that yourself. And you can see coastal communities, for instance, represented on the right-hand side. And part of what I've tried to do as a cartoonist, self-taught by nature, is think through what does it even take to create a clean energy economy. You can see different aspects of the clean energy economy, ranging from manufacturing and ports to transmission and the actual turbines and blades involved. And in fact, in that bottom right corner is a panel where a little joke was told to me in Paulsboro, New Jersey, where they didn't want even questions about blades. They just said, hey, we build the big tube here, don't ask me anything else. So part of it is an understanding that there are a lot of different pieces to assemble in offshore wind, and also understanding the power of this graphic storytelling is being able to vary panel sizes, think through different aspects, what it takes to assemble a larger supply chain. And then the equity vision of it all is, again, something would like to think we could all return to. I like that bottom middle photo where you see me chowing down on a burrito as an example of what the work can be like on the go, but also in the distance, you can see the retired fossil fuel power plant at Morro Bay. And part of it is a recognition that longer term, to get to a clean energy grid, to create the good paying jobs that we hope to aspire to, we also need to recognize longer term that we are transitioning our economy to better infrastructure at the end of the day. And then the final pages really end on comics pages again that I've created, thinking through the different aspects of offshore wind work and even how it relates to my own personal story. I was to tell you a little bit about myself, I was a kid who grew up in a liquor store, in essence. My parents were South Korean immigrants who came to this country with very kind of financially driven notions of success. And it was literally portrayed, in terms of my own father's hot air balloon ride that he got. As you can see, it's the shape of a whiskey bottle, which is in essence a freebie that he got while operating his liquor store. But for me, I often thought about the costs and sacrifices that I made to even do the work that I do at Brightline. So you can see, for instance, as a lawyer, my parents always had aspirations for me to go out and study hard, work at a typical law firm, acquire property, and then at the end of it all, perhaps give them a Mercedes-Benz as a gift. Now, of course, they didn't need the Mercedes-Benz itself, but it was really more about the gesture, and then often thinking about what's in it for me. And that is something that I grapple with a lot in my nonprofit work and working with the diverse communities that we do. And then, also recognizing that, my parents were disconnected from the environment. They never quite understood it in the terms that many people in this room do. And that, let alone environmental justice issues, it was not even in their capacity to work on or to even care about. And part of what I've been thinking through is with Assemblymember Don Addis's leadership with AB 2537, the creation of such a fund to engage by local communities in something like offshore wind, which is a really ethereal concept to some. And you can see it, again, visually represented in this other set of pages where many people will recognize this as an accommodations platform for offshore wind. You can see that pitched platform that has helicopters flying back and forth. And I was lucky enough to see this and then fly out and then understand it. And you can see also the visual parallels between my own parents' economic notions of climbing a ladder and then more kind of environmental aspirations of ascending into hopefully a better world. I tried to explain this all to my father in the bottom right-hand panel, and it's quite dark in nature because he's been suffering from dementia himself, but it essentially says, I don't care about any of that, give me a cup of coffee. Part of the challenge, though, is constantly thinking through what is the state that we can work toward here and the now. And so the panels you'll listen to this afternoon, I think, will be extraordinary. We have, for instance, right after me, an ocean user conservation panel featuring speakers from NRDC, Audubon Society, the California Coastal Commission, which are all, as you know, from other work in other international waters on the East Coast, really concrete concerns that do need to be addressed. We also have academic institutions like Cal Poly SLO and the Schatz Energy Center that will be featured later on. And third, and perhaps a set of perspectives that needs to be heeded, especially now, are tribal perspectives. So we have a tribal perspectives panel later on for you today, led by none other but by Jen Gagnon herself. And I'm very much personally looking forward to that. But part of it, all this is a recognition that we need to continue seeking out more and more perspectives. I am very grateful to Adam Stern and the California Offshore Wind Summit for bringing together such a diverse set of constituencies in the room to discuss this incredibly complex piece of subject matter. And part of this, which is a floating offshore wind turbine you'll recognize from Kincardine, Scotland, is a recognition that this technology is extraordinary, but also pausing for a moment, having the humility to recognize it's not the magical solution to climate change. And I hope nobody in here is in the room just for the sake of building offshore wind turbines itself, is with a driven sense of purpose. And for Brightline, the equity work that we do ultimately, it's about thinking through how does it benefit local impacted communities? Because if we can't do that, what's the point? So with that in mind, I hope you'll listen closely to the panelists that will follow after me and very much appreciate your attention this afternoon. Thank you.